When the player that jealous veterans openly tried to tear down doesn't just survive, but completely outgrows the league itself and starts winning on a level they can't even access anymore, everything changes. Caitlin Clark just shattered another ceiling, landing the most prestigious broadcasting opportunity in women's basketball history by joining NBA coverage on NBC alongside literal basketball royalty.
Announced on Tuesday that Caitlin Clark will join NBC Sports to serve as a special contributor for its new Basketball Night in America program. Caitlin Clark will make her debut as a TV analyst on February 1st, preceding the Lakers versus Knicks game at Madison Square Garden, per a release from NBC.
And this moment exposes everything the league tried to deny about her impact. NBC Sports announced this week that Clark will serve as a special contributor for their brand new Basketball Night in America program, making her debut today, February 1st, at Madison Square Garden right before the Los Angeles Lakers face the New York Knicks. This isn't some minor media cameo or quick sideline interview. This is primetime national television tied to the NBA, the most powerful basketball brand on the planet. And Clark becomes the first active WNBA player ever trusted to fill that role in this capacity. The timing couldn't be more perfect or more uncomfortable for her critics. While veteran players spent 2 seasons claiming Clark wasn't the reason ratings exploded, ticket sales surged, and mainstream fans showed up in record numbers, NBC quietly made their move and placed her front and center on one of the biggest basketball stages in America.
Wow. So this would be akin to, they have Sunday Night Football, and it starts with a pregame show called Football Night in America. I didn't know they were creating Basketball Night in America, but here we are. Here we are. It will be Caitlin Clark's first time in an analyst-type role on TV.
NBC didn't need league approval or a union vote to recognize what fans already knew. Clark moves the needle in ways no one else currently can, and the market just proved it. Before we dive deeper into why this moment matters so much, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on all the latest basketball news and controversies that everyone's talking about. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The historic NBC deal nobody saw coming. NBC didn't just hand Caitlin Clark another endorsement deal. They brought her into their brand new Basketball Night in America broadcast, placing her directly alongside NBA legends on one of the most valuable stages in sports media. The panel she's joining reads like a Hall of Fame roster. Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, and Reggie Miller, all basketball icons whose careers define excellence at the highest level. Maria Taylor, one of the most respected hosts in sports broadcasting, anchors the show that serves as NBC's Sunday night basketball strategy. Sam Flood, executive producer for NBC Sports, didn't mince words about why they made this move. He told the Associated Press that Clark is the most iconic figure in basketball right now, not just in the women's game, but in the game in general. That's a massive statement coming from someone who oversees one of the biggest sports media operations in the country.
Clark joins Michael Jordan as a splashy acquisition for NBC and NBA coverage. Despite his limited role, simply having Jordan as part of the coverage created buzz. NBC is surely hoping Caitlin Clark's involvement will do the same. Of course, Caitlin Clark is expected to offer unique insights in assuming the analyst role for the first time, and her basketball IQ cannot be questioned. So the transition will be a seamless one for the Indiana Fever's star point.
NBC is betting big on Clark's ability to deliver eyeballs, credibility, and cultural relevance, the exact things every network craves. Her debut isn't being hidden on a quiet Tuesday night either. February 1st at Madison Square Garden, right before one of the league's most iconic matchups between the Lakers and Knicks, means her first appearance as an analyst will be in front of millions of NBA fans. This is the world's most famous arena, hosting a game that will dominate sports headlines. NBC didn't ease her in quietly with a low-stakes appearance. They threw her straight into the spotlight with maximum visibility. What makes this even more significant is that Clark will return for a second appearance on March 29th when the Knicks visit the Oklahoma City Thunder. This isn't a one-off publicity stunt. NBC is building a relationship with her, positioning her as someone who can contribute meaningful basketball analysis on their most important broadcasts.
Quote, I'm really excited to be part of Basketball Night in America crew this season, said Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is one of the most captivating players and dynamic scorers in basketball, said Sam Flood, executive producer of NBC Sports. We're excited to have Caitlin join Hall of Famers Melo, Vince, Tracy, and Reggie in New York for the launch of Sunday Night Basketball.
The network clearly sees long-term value in what she brings to the table, and they're investing accordingly. Flood also revealed something that shows just how confident they are in her abilities. He said Clark has had cameras pointed at her for years and has always been thoughtful in everything she says. After games, she's consistently delivered great interviews, demonstrating basketball IQ and communication skills that translate perfectly to broadcasting. This isn't someone being handed a role because of name recognition alone. Clark has proven she can articulate the game at a high level, and NBC recognized that immediately. The compensation for this role is expected to exceed what many WNBA players earn in full salaries, not because Clark demanded it through protests or threats, but because the market decided she was worth it. When a major network like NBC offers you a platform alongside Hall of Famers, they're not doing it out of charity. They're doing it because they believe you can deliver value that justifies the investment. And in Clark's case, that value is undeniable. The ratings revolution nobody wants to admit. For 2 straight seasons, certain veteran players insisted Caitlin Clark wasn't responsible for the WNBA's sudden surge in attention, ratings, and revenue. They claimed the league was growing organically, that women's basketball was finally getting its due, and that crediting one player was disrespectful to everyone else who built the foundation.
God gave you a person, and now you're rejecting it. Y'all should be like Caesar. I appreciate you, Caitlin. Thank you. I can eat a little bit better. She got paid this. She get a signature shoe. Hey, I'm a 2-time MVP. I'm a champion. The fact that there's this much animosity about the person that's feeding you. And I'm going to say it just like she's feeding y'all.
Yes.
Doors that y'all didn't do. So to be honest, shut up. Because y'all couldn't do it. Just accept it and benefit. Be happy.
But the numbers tell a completely different story. One that's impossible to ignore. Clark's regular season debut against the Connecticut Sun on May 14, 2024, was the most-watched WNBA game since 2002 and the most-watched ever on ESPN2 or any cable network. Just 4 days later, her game against the New York Liberty set the league's ABC viewership record with 1.71 million viewers. In the following week, Clark's game set WNBA viewership marks on ESPN, ION, and NBA TV. These aren't minor improvements. These are historic spikes that shattered records that had stood for decades. Attendance numbers exploded in ways the league had never experienced. More than 400,000 people attended WNBA games in May 2024 alone, with over half of them being sellouts, marking the highest attendance record for the WNBA in over 2 decades. The Indiana Fever set a new single-season record with 340,715 fans for total home attendance, a number that dwarfed previous benchmarks. Multiple teams moved their home games against the Fever to larger arenas just to accommodate the public interest in seeing Clark play.
She announced she was going pro. I immediately ran over to Lynn Dunn and said, "We have Elvis." She's like, "What?" I said, "There's been a lot of singers in music. There's only one Elvis. This is Elvis." And I knew, I've been in sports for 40 years. I knew this was something special. There's moving the needle. She's the needle. And I say it, there's been no one like her in all of...
Her game against the Washington Mystics on June 7, 2024, moved to the Capital One Arena, had an attendance of 20,333, the most for a WNBA game since the 2007 finals and the 5th most for a regular season game in league history. When the two teams met again on September 19th for the regular season finale, they drew the WNBA's highest ever attendance for a regular season game at 20,711. The venue normally holds around 4,100 people, but demand was so intense they had to relocate to accommodate the crowd. These aren't just statistics. These are cultural moments that brought new audiences into women's basketball. People who had never watched a WNBA game before showed up specifically to see Caitlin Clark. Families brought their daughters. Casual sports fans tuned in out of curiosity, and many of them stayed because they enjoyed what they saw. The sport benefited massively from this influx of attention, creating opportunities for sponsorships, media deals, and league expansion that simply didn't exist before. Yet despite all this documented evidence, veteran players continued to downplay Clark's impact. Some openly mocked the new fans, dismissing them as fake supporters who only cared about one player. Others rolled their eyes during interviews when asked about Clark's influence, suggesting the attention was overblown and unfair to other talented athletes in the league. This gatekeeping mentality alienated the very people who were bringing fresh energy and revenue into the sport. The irony is almost painful. The same players who complained about lack of media coverage, low salaries, and limited mainstream attention spent the last 2 years pushing away the audience that could solve those problems. And now, as those new fans watch Caitlin Clark get rewarded with elite media opportunities, they're remembering who made them feel welcome and who didn't. NBC understands what the league refuses to say publicly. Clark isn't just a player, she's a media engine. And placing her on a prime-time NBA broadcast maximizes that power instantly. While Caitlin Clark is stepping into one of the most exclusive media roles in basketball, the WNBA is quietly spiraling through one of the messiest labor negotiations in its history. The previous collective bargaining agreement expired on January 9th, 2026, and as of today, February 1st, no new deal has been reached. Veteran players are locked in chaotic CBA talks filled with public complaints, protest stunts, and salary demands that don't match the league's financial reality. Here's what the league has offered: a maximum base salary of $1 million by 2026, with revenue sharing potentially pushing total earnings for maximum salary players above $1.2 million. The average salary for players would exceed $500,000, while the minimum salary would be above $225,000. The salary cap would increase from roughly $1.5 million in 2025 to $5 million in the first year under the new CBA. That represents a massive leap from the previous structure, where the minimum was $66,079 and the supermax was $249,244. Those numbers sound incredible on paper. A 340% increase in average salary is substantial by any measure. The league is also proposing a revenue-sharing framework that would allocate as much as 70% of net revenue to players, with projections suggesting the average salary could exceed $780,000 over the course of the deal. Maximum salaries could soar to $2 million during the life of the agreement, with multiple players on a team possibly earning the maximum. But the players want more, much more. The union proposed an average player salary of $1 million, with a maximum of $2.5 million. Their proposal included a projected salary cap of about $12.5 million for 2026, which is over 8 times the 2025 cap. They later reduced that to $10.5 million, but the league is still only proposing $5 million. The fundamental disagreement centers on revenue sharing. The WNBA is proposing 70% of net revenue, while players are advocating for 30% of gross revenue. The key distinction is that net revenue is what remains after expenses, while gross revenue is calculated before any costs are deducted. According to ESPN, the owners are unlikely to make significant concessions regarding their revenue-sharing stance. League insiders told ESPN they are waiting for the union to submit what they would consider a more realistic proposal. As of late January, the Players Association was still awaiting an official response from the league after sending a proposal nearly a month earlier. The union confirmed they were still waiting for a response weeks after submitting it. The league, however, believes the latest union proposal wasn't different enough from past versions to warrant a formal response. This standoff is creating real tension. Some players have called the league's offers a slap in the face, language that immediately turned public opinion against them. When you're being offered salaries that exceed what the vast majority of working Americans earn, calling it insulting doesn't sit well with fans who struggle to pay their own bills. Social media comment sections exploded with criticism, pointing out the disconnect between player expectations and league economics. Sports commentators have warned that players might be losing public support because of how they're articulating their frustrations. When a deal is presented with a max salary over $1 million and revenue sharing, and your response is to call it offensive, you're not reading the room correctly. Fans haven't forgotten the last 2 seasons. They remember the interviews where veteran players mocked new audiences, dismissed casual viewers, and complained about people only showing up to watch Caitlin Clark. And now those same players are asking for massive paydays funded by the exact people they spent years insulting. The WNBA has already scheduled the season to commence on May 8, making it crucial to finalize an agreement soon. But as negotiations drag on with no resolution in sight, fans are starting to wonder if veteran players actually want a deal, or if something else is happening behind the scenes. And that's where things get really uncomfortable. The real scandal behind these failed negotiations isn't just unrealistic demands. It's a massive conflict of interest sitting right at the top of union leadership. Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier don't just hold leadership roles within the WNBA Players Association. They also co-own and actively promote Unrivaled, a competing professional basketball league that directly targets WNBA players, sponsors, and fans. Let that sink in for a moment. The same two people who are vice presidents of the union negotiating for better WNBA salaries and working conditions are simultaneously building a rival league that benefits when the WNBA struggles. If the WNBA locks out players, or if negotiations collapse into a strike, where do those players go? Some of them go to Unrivaled, which conveniently offers an alternative. Every dollar that doesn't go to WNBA players creates leverage for Unrivaled to position itself as the better option. Nafisa Collier has denied any conflict of interest, stating publicly that she's committed to both ventures. But fans aren't buying it. When asked directly about the concerns, Collier pushed back against what she called lockout conspiracy theories, insisting her intentions are pure. Stewart echoed similar sentiments, suggesting there's no contradiction between advocating for WNBA players while also running a competing business. Yet the optics are terrible, and the timing is even worse. Sophie Cunningham, a WNBA player, acknowledged on a podcast that she sees the conflict of interest between what Stewart and Collier are doing with Unrivaled and their roles in WNBA negotiations. She questioned what steps were being taken to address that conflict and ensure players were getting real facts and real truths about what's happening in CBA talks. Her comments resonated with fans who had been thinking the same thing, but hadn't heard anyone inside the league willing to say it publicly. Once fans fully understood that union leadership stood to benefit personally from WNBA instability, the tone online shifted from confusion to outright anger. Suddenly, the stalled negotiations didn't feel accidental anymore. Supporters began asking why the same leaders demanding higher WNBA salaries were openly promoting a rival league during active labor talks, and why they seemed more energized talking about unrivaled sustainability than fixing the league they represent. Every interview Stewart and Collier gave about Unrivaled added fuel to the backlash, because it became harder to believe these negotiations were about player welfare when personal business interests were clearly involved. If the WNBA crumbles under the weight of unrealistic salary demands, Unrivaled is positioned to swoop in and capture disgruntled players and sponsors. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's basic business strategy, and fans are smart enough to connect the dots. This conflict of interest undermines the entire negotiation process. How can players trust that their union leadership is fighting for the best WNBA deal possible when those same leaders have a financial incentive for the WNBA to fail? How can the league negotiate in good faith when they know the people across the table might secretly prefer a collapse? These are legitimate questions that deserve answers, but neither Stewart nor Collier has provided anything close to a satisfying explanation. The situation puts other players in an impossible position. Do they speak out against their union leadership and risk being labeled as divisive? Or do they stay silent and hope the conflict resolves itself? Meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking, the season start date approaches, and the league's momentum hangs in the balance. All because the people tasked with protecting player interests are playing both sides. The most glaring example of veteran jealousy toward Caitlin Clark came during the 2025 WNBA All-Star voting. Clark received over 1.29 million fan votes, a WNBA record, and more than any player had ever received. Media members voted her third among guards, recognizing her impact and talent. But her fellow WNBA players? They ranked her 9th best guard in the league. 9th, not top 5, not even top 7. 9th. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Dick Vitale, the legendary ESPN broadcaster, didn't hold back. He posted on social media that it was absolutely pure jealousy that WNBA players voted Caitlin Clark the 9th best guard. He went on to say that someday they'll realize what she's done for all the players in the WNBA, including higher salaries, chartered flights, sold-out crowds, and better television ratings. His comments went viral because they articulated what millions of fans were already thinking. Critics tried to justify the ranking by pointing to Clark's injury struggles, during the 2025 season. She had missed 7 games and was in a shooting slump, going 1 for 23 from three-point range over a 3-game stretch. Her turnovers and defensive challenges were cited as legitimate reasons for the lower ranking. But none of that explains how she could be first in fan voting by a historic margin, third in media voting, and ninth in player voting. The disparity was too extreme to be explained away by on-court performance alone. The message veteran players sent was clear. We don't respect you. We don't appreciate what you've brought to this league. And we're going to use our votes to publicly diminish your accomplishments. It was petty. It was transparent, and it backfired spectacularly. Fans didn't suddenly start doubting Clark's talent. Instead, they started doubting the professionalism and judgment of the veterans who ranked her ninth. The jealousy extended beyond voting. Throughout the 2024 and 2025 seasons, opponents targeted Clark with physical play that crossed the line from competitive to excessive. Hard fouls, unnecessary contact, and trash talk became routine whenever she stepped on the court. Some of it was standard basketball intensity, but much of it felt personal. Veterans weren't just trying to beat her. They were trying to send a message that she didn't belong, that she hadn't earned respect yet, and that her fame was undeserved. But the tactic failed. Every time Clark got knocked down and got back up, her fanbase grew more loyal. Every time a veteran dismissed her influence in a post-game interview, casual viewers remembered the disrespect. And every time the media asked why new fans only cared about one player, those new fans felt insulted and unwelcome. The gatekeeping mentality that was supposed to protect the league's established stars instead alienated the audience that could elevate everyone. Commentators like Stephen A. Smith and others called it out repeatedly, saying that veterans should be thanking Clark for what she's brought to the league, not resenting her for it. One viral clip showed a commentator saying that God gave them a person who's feeding them, and instead of being grateful, they're rejecting her. The metaphor resonated because it captured the absurdity of the situation perfectly. Clark made the pie bigger for everyone, and instead of celebrating that, some players complained that she was getting too much pie. Now those same players are watching Clark sit comfortably next to Hall of Famers, discussing NBA basketball on national television, while they wave inflatable rats outside league offices demanding salaries the league can't afford. The contrast couldn't be starker. One side focused on building value and earning opportunities through excellence. The other side focused on demanding recognition and money without delivering equivalent market appeal. The market has spoken, and it chose Caitlin Clark. Right now, the WNBA faces a critical moment that could define its future for the next decade. On one side, you have Caitlin Clark and the new generation of fans she brought with her, people who are excited about women's basketball and willing to invest their time, money, and attention. On the other side, you have veteran players and union leadership locked in negotiations that threaten to derail the league's momentum at the worst possible time. Clark didn't need to threaten a season, shame fans, or stage protests to get her NBC opportunity. She earned her seat through excellence, professionalism, and consistency. While others argued about credit and respect, she focused on getting better and delivering value that people wanted to invest in. NBC didn't bring her in to represent WNBA politics. They brought her in because she delivers eyeballs, credibility, and cultural relevance. The league itself is experiencing rapid growth, but stalling that momentum at such a pivotal moment could have negative consequences for everyone involved. According to reports, owners have no interest in invoking a lockout, and players authorize strike measures only as a show of seriousness, not necessarily as an indication they would actually strike. But the longer negotiations drag on without resolution, the more damage is done to public perception and fan enthusiasm. Fans are paying close attention to who is growing the game and who is risking it. They see Clark expanding opportunities and attracting new audiences while maintaining grace under pressure. They see veteran players making unrealistic demands and dismissing the very fans whose support funds their salaries. The contrast is stark, and the message is sinking in. One side is focused on building something sustainable. The other side is trapped in ego, entitlement, and internal politics that push people away. The conflict of interest with unrivaled adds another layer of complexity. If union leadership genuinely wants the WNBA to succeed, they need to remove any doubt about their motivations by stepping back from competing business interests during negotiations. If they can't do that, other players should demand new representation that isn't compromised. The stakes are too high for half measures or conflicted loyalties. Clark's NBC deal also sends a message to younger players about what's possible when you prioritize excellence over grievance. Instead of complaining about not getting enough attention, become someone advertisers and networks want to work with. Instead of demanding respect, Earn it through performance and professionalism. Instead of blaming others for your circumstances, create value that the market rewards. Clark has done all of those things, and now she's reaping the benefits. The path forward for the WNBA is clear, but it requires humility and compromise from people who have shown little willingness to exhibit either. The league needs to finalize a CBA that balances player compensation with financial sustainability. Players need to accept that dramatic salary increases take time and can't be forced through ultimatums. Union leadership needs to resolve conflicts of interest or step aside. And everyone needs to recognize that alienating fans who showed up because of Caitlin Clark is the fastest way to kill the momentum that's been built. As Caitlin Clark prepares to make her debut on Basketball Night in America today at Madison Square Garden, veteran players are facing a choice. They can continue down the path of resentment, demanding money the league can't afford while dismissing the fans who fund their salaries. Or they can recognize that Clark's success doesn't diminish their accomplishments. It creates opportunities for everyone. The jealousy that defined the last 2 seasons accomplished nothing positive. It didn't make veteran players more popular. It didn't increase their endorsement deals. It didn't earn them prime-time media roles. All it did was expose pettiness and insecurity that turned fans against them. Meanwhile, Clark kept her head down, played through injuries, handled criticism with grace, and built a brand that transcends basketball. NBC's decision to feature her alongside Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, and Reggie Miller isn't a participation trophy. It's a recognition that she's earned a seat at the table through talent, work ethic, and market appeal. Sam Flood didn't pick her because he felt obligated. He picked her because she's the most iconic figure in basketball right now, and he believes she'll thrive in the role. The veterans who ranked Clark 9th best guard and mocked her fans are now watching her reach heights they'll never access. Not because the system is rigged, but because she created value that others didn't. She didn't need union protection or special treatment. She needed a platform, and she maximized every opportunity she was given. That's the lesson everyone should take from this moment. If you've made it this far, make sure you drop a comment below with your thoughts on Caitlin Clark's NBC deal and whether veteran players were wrong to treat her the way they did. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos covering the biggest stories in basketball. Your support means everything. Caitlin Clark's rise didn't happen by accident. It happened because she delivered what fans wanted: entertainment, excellence, and authenticity. NBC saw that. Sponsors saw that. Millions of new WNBA fans saw that. The only people who seem unable to see it are the veteran players whose careers could have been elevated by simply embracing the wave instead of fighting against it. Now they're stuck in stalled negotiations while Clark expands her influence into new arenas. The irony is almost too perfect. The WNBA had a gift handed to it in the form of Caitlin Clark's talent and marketability. What happens next depends on whether the league and its players can get out of their own way long enough to capitalize on that gift. Today's NBC debut is just the beginning of what Clark can accomplish beyond the court. The question is whether the WNBA will still be thriving when she's ready to retire, or if the league will have squandered its golden opportunity by prioritizing ego over growth. Time will tell, but right now the message is crystal clear. Excellence gets rewarded, professionalism opens doors, and jealousy gets you left behind while others move forward. Caitlin Clark is moving forward. The choice for everyone else is whether to follow her lead or keep fighting battles they've already lost.